Dev's Project Management Webcast for this morning. We have a few different guests. We've got our NextLev team in-house on hand, a few attending by silent watching, but participating today, we've got our very own project management expert, Jason Trach, as always. That's here for any of your questions, dialogue, or collaboration. We have a special guest today, Dr. Jim Prop, which I will properly introduce in a moment. I just want to start off by saying if anyone that's watching internationally, locally, and just viewing, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out, let us know. The whole point of this web forum is that it's interactive and for you to take full advantage of having access to our project management instructor, teacher, who's been PMI certified since 1996. You have access to his expertise in a nice, casual, informal manner that you can take advantage of this opportunity to use them. I understand, so Dr. Prop is sitting there next to Jason in his office, and I was just wondering, I looked over your history, your vast expertise, always using project management in quite a few different areas, Dr. Prop, both in education and in human resources and morale team building. Is there any examples that off the top of your head come to mind when you think about how the project management principles and process have had a role in your work?
Not sure how to answer that. That's a good question.
Because project management role linked with, and even not even thinking project management, because I know I was just talking with Dr. Jim Prop about the project management methodologies, which he intuitively follows. This is where, if I can cut in for a sec, is, and as Carla was stating, the project management principles, you actually follow them intuitively because of the structured approach that you do. So if you wanted to even rephrase that a bit, just to say, how do you follow in a structured manager your team building? Because, and that's a reminder for this webcast and all the people out there, is too often we get caught up with saying, is this the best PM way? And like, you probably don't see yourself as an expert in project management, but because you don't have the certification that PMP says you are. However, the way you think in a logical, structured manner, and the process, the approach that you follow is repeatable. That's pure project management, but you just don't use the PMP terms. So, so how about a few comments like Carla's in terms of HR linking to your...
Sure. I think the first comment that comes to mind is what I intuitively do now is developed over a long career, and what I find is sometimes difficult is to explain that using specific sets of terminology, so I tend to more just speak. And my background is in education. I was a teacher and a principal for many years, worked with the ministry as a seconded teacher. But one of the things that I think it resonates with me through that whole experience is finding ways to engage people that works best for them rather than cookie cutter templates. And I was saying to Jason earlier, that was my realization after my second year as a classroom teacher, that forget it trying to control people. What I needed to do was find ways to connect. So having said that, made changes to the physical arrangement in classrooms, and I think that experience has just continued to grow and grow over the years. So when I became in a position where I was working with adult learners, i.e. actually teachers, in the last 7 years as a consultant working with adults as well, is many of those lessons carried on with me, and again, as I kind of think of myself as a bit of an HR consultant as well. And with respect to building teams, some of those early lessons have still carried forward and worked well in helping other people realize. I use the expression to focus on gathering gifts rather than dwelling on deficiencies. And that was in my work, both in education and since then, is the focus of what I try to do. If we want to call it project management, couch it under that particular umbrella. The thing I think that worked best for me was, as I said, taking the word weakness and just setting that off to the side, as it's very easy to get sidetracked on weakness, and in my estimation, all you end up with is mediocre. By gathering strengths together, whether that was with a classroom of 14-year-olds or a group of 30 teachers, what we find in organizations too is when we know what our strengths are, there's usually somebody there that can do what we don't like. For example, I think one of the things that I would have some trouble with is if I had to be doing accounting work all the time. In my experience, well, I know that's not a strength for me, so I'll trade that for something else. The example I spoke to Jason with earlier is an administrator having to do the morning attendance calls to find out where my missing kids were. It isn't that I hated it, it just wasn't something that I enjoyed per se. But I found my office admin, she used to do that and she loved it. She didn't like doing the newsletter, so we just did a switch. So there's those kinds of things that we can find ways to trade off, and I don't know if there's any really earth-shattering result from that, other than it just, to me, it sort of was common sense. And I think that was one of the principles that's worked well over these years, both in education and since my time as an independent consultant, in finding ways with the client groups that I work with to bring that message to the individuals in their organizations so that they can benefit from some of these understandings that have developed over the years too, that I find are very transferable and are very flexible in terms of you can tweak and fit to what it is that you need, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit company, whether it's an educational institution or a group of counselors. We can still find ways that these, I call them, I don't know, I hesitate to use the word strategies. I think maybe technique is better, to help pull your team together to share the strengths around. And in that way, I found that we can better move forward together as individuals and as a unit, meeting not only individual goals, but also for those of the organization or the institution that we might be attached to. I think I'll stop there.
You raised some really good points, that it's one thing to have learned certain skill set or skills and knowledge and processes. It's another thing to be cognizant and aware of the fact that maybe it's not your strength. And in fact, let's look around you in your team, of your environment, whatever type of market or environment you might be working in, and find out if there's other peers that would be their strength. You pull on the strengths of everybody that is around you, and next thing you know, you've got a pretty good team working towards a common goal, as opposed to, there's probably the other aspect too, Dr. Pop, of not just when you mentioned the attendance in the morning and the newsletter swapping, but then there's the bigger aspect of the day-to-day emotional feeling of maybe not enjoying it, and what play does that have on the rest of your day and then in your work. By simply being cognizant and aware of those differences and strengths in the people that you work with, everyone goes about their responsibilities and accountabilities for that day much happier, I'd imagine. A soft win that's in the background of it. Actually, and speaking on that same perspective and bringing it as a parallel into our project management online course that we offer with NextLev. One differentiator is that how Jason Trach's course is built is not just on a typical generic PMI processes only. He's ISO 9000 certified as well and incorporates those methodologies. Why is that significant? Well, you're not just getting then a general course that you can pick up from quite a lot of these different online sites that are, you know, Groupon or from the States and all these $99 deals. This exposes any individual that's taking the course to several different methodologies and real-life business experience with business projects that he's worked on all of his career and brought into real-life application. You can pick and choose what works for you, what makes sense to you in the market you're in or the industry you're in, or just with your style. One thing you had mentioned, Dr. Prop, was just about the different, what speaks to us, our preferences of how we want to work, what we want to work on, and that's another thing that might be otherwise overlooked with the differences of our NextLev course. Jason exposes quite a few different methodologies, and you can pick and choose what applies to that person. We don't all learn the same way, but we also don't work throughout our work days the same way. And this gives you that opportunity to employ what speaks to you, and delegate and hand off and empower those around you to show their strengths. Have you ever found that you've been using in your day-to-day life in the different landscapes, cities, and job perspectives that you've been in, because you've been quite a few different places, where you're using the semantics and dialogue of project management?
Another good question. Think about that for a minute. I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, given the variety of areas that I've had an opportunity to work in, has this approach, I like to think of that as a strengths-based approach. It's not something that I've invented. I mean, I borrowed from the work of Don Clifton, but it does a really good job of representing what I believe in, what I'm committed to, what I have a passion for, what gets me fired up. And whether we're talking about a group of grade 9 students or the teachers in that school building, or if I'm talking to or working with members of a nonprofit organization or salespeople, the approaches that I think I feel passionate about are easily transferable. What, again, kind of keeping with the talk matching the walk, meeting with those individuals or their managers in advance and saying, okay, what are the concerns that you have and how can I best make this work to get you the desired goals that you want for your people? And the other thing that I think is really important too is that it's not just a one-shot, to always leave something so that when I'm gone and you're in your organization, you still have that opportunity to do some additional things to keep that, to be your own champions. I think basically is a real key feature for me. To me, it always comes down to the people, whether we're talking about an organization moving towards meeting its goals or individuals in that organization within a particular department, for example. I mean, to me, it's the same thing. That we can utilize these concepts, these understandings, these soft skills. I think is probably one of my specialties in communication and interaction, and they're very easily transferable and flexible, that they can be used in a variety of contexts. If we're talking about project management, again, I don't know how you move a project forward without paying attention to and investing in the people. So I think that's where that comes in.
And you hit it, is because. And even as Carla was mentioning, is because she's got a lot more experience in the project management terms, and this is a very projectized forum, but you use best practices from Clifton. So there is a global recognized, he's going to have his own language, but a lot of his concepts align directly with the PMI. So when you go into and then you move into the quality gurus like Taguchi, Deming, so they all have their variations in terminology, but really, and I think you're hitting on it a lot, is just keeping it simple. Do what makes sense in accordance to your audience at the time. So.
And thanks for that. That's exactly what I'm committed to. Is early on when I started out consulting, coming out of post-secondary institution where I had been teaching, I really thought it was about the content and being able to insert these names of all of these experts. And at the end of the day, the people that I was working with that particular could care less. They wanted to know what can I take away from this, and how is it going to make what I do better, easier, more productive, more positive, whatever the goal might have been for that particular in-service or that professional growth day. So I tend to speak more in lay terms. Just that I found that's with the clientele that I've been working with these last 7 years, that's made sense for them. So yeah, the concepts from project management
you have a skill in that, and I'm going to thank you in your doctorate, as a PhD. I really enjoy the meetings that we have, is because I don't have a PI. You have the expertise, but you have the ability to let's just dumb it down for a guy like me.
Well, and to me that makes sense. And, as I said before, it's not a comfort zone for me either to be putting on this pretense of spouting off all of these scholars and dropping names here and there. I mean, that's important. I understand that because it grounds the work that we do. But at the end of the day, the easier I can make that for people to understand, and I've always been big on takeaway. What can I take away from this that articulates into the field that I do, and make my situation better, more productive, happier, more pleasant, stronger, whatever it happens to be for that particular individual organization. Happy people work harder for you.
I think at the end of the day, for that's again in any market, that's what you want to walk away with. You need value, and you need to understand what's the when you say the takeaway and the value add that I'm going to leave with, having had that discussion, consultation, course, or training with someone so that you can apply it. It's one thing to take as much training and different knowledge and education as you can get your hands on. It's different from that to applying it on your day-to-day, and then seeing the betterment, seeing the better productivity, the better utility in your job, happiness in your role, and better success. Two different things.
You can't underestimate job satisfaction.
Yeah.
It might be an overused term, but I do believe that there's, it's not just from a common sense perspective either, but also as someone I think who has a bit of a sense of organizational effectiveness and the sorts of things that we need to do in organizations.
Now that is interesting. I'd be wondering about studies, because from your studies too, is you've been able to see the generational change in even the last 10 years. Is maybe job satisfaction 20 years ago not so big of a deal because it was more of a hierarchical functional environment where almost military style is, you're lucky you got a job, do what the boss says, manage me. Now it's about coaching and counseling, and this generation doesn't put up with it. And now you actually see, I've just invested, what's the average, $25,000 to $35,000 in year one is what it costs a company to hire a new person. So if you're not going to have them last for over a year, you just lost a huge. So
retention, that's a huge consideration, and I'm more comfortable speaking from education on that point. Is when I have to go back here about 2001, 2002. The statistics that we had for new teachers starting out was 7 out of 10 would probably leave the field within the first 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that I understand is down to 5 out of 10 now. That was what I've heard most recently.
Oh my goodness!
And Dr. Knapp, down to 5 out of 10 now due to what?
I think the reasons that Jason was speaking about is finding the ways to keep those new people engaged in what it is that they're doing is, for those that aren't within the system, the job of a teacher, particularly in rural Saskatchewan, where the bulk of my career was, you're not just in that classroom from, as the misconception, from 9 until 3:30. Most of those folks are in the building by 6 or 7 a.m. And I rarely left before 7:30 p.m. And often there were people still in the building well past 10 o'clock. So it's an all-encompassing job for those 10 months out of the year. But new people coming in, and I don't know, I'm not going to point fingers at their preparation. I know for myself coming in as a newbie, there was a lot more to the job that we weren't told about. So it's all these extra things that we have to find and provide skills to make it not only that the new people stay interested and engaged, but also follow through on a commitment to stay for longer than 3 years. I mean, you can't hold anybody back from a transfer, but what distressed me was people regularly leaving the field for something else.
Yeah, well, that's what I actually now I'm starting to understand and embrace, and I do feel it's good for our culture, is that in the old days you stuck to your job, it didn't look good on your resume if you had a lot of jobs, and you stayed for retirement.
Yep.
Now it is, we need to learn from the younger generation, I feel, is to say live life now, enjoy life now, and if you don't have a buzz and a rush and a happiness around your job, switch careers, maybe 3, 4 times, and they're doing that.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that us older generations were we missed out a bit, but the new guys aren't going to, because they've seen their parents. If anything, not very happy about that. But that's where we have to come back to a project management side, is really understand your team and really understand what's in it for them. What gives them the rush? Like, how do you get them happy? And then go from there. So
yeah, I think you're talking about ownership too. There's a word that I would use, is finding ways to provide ownership to your team so that they're meaningful contributions and it's not just busy work. Yep.
I like this dialogue, guys. It's good conversation, and this is kind of all speaking to real-world, applicable, useful knowledge that a person can walk away with having careful thought about, and to analyze a little bit later and throw around in the back of your mind as anyone goes about their day and their work. And this again is speaks a little bit more to project management's principles being applied on a day-to-day real world. We use that term a lot, but we mean it real world, real life application. And the way we do live and breathe things at NextLev and have spilled that into our online course is absolutely ensuring that that is ignited in the course and that you feel it when you speak to Jason. For anyone that's watching out there and thinking of why should I take this this particular course, or how is it different, there's so many differentiators. If you want a simple PowerPoint course that's just been translated onto, a course that's translated into PowerPoint, maybe with a bit of video, then this is not the course for you. The NextLev course has a huge degree of interactive tools. You can download checklists and quizzes, tests, assessments, web links to other sources, and have all those exams, games, gamification. It's interactive to the fullest degree that you need it to be. You can skip over what doesn't apply to you, but it allows you to learn and manipulate the course the way you want to. Any other regular project management online course dictates to you how you'll move through the units and how you move through the course. That's not the NextLev one. Ours allows you to control those functions of whether you learn on a vertical scale or have it organized by chart or by line, or horizontally. You can organize your table of contents and how you manipulate the data so that you know where you are in the course and how you like to learn. There's quite a bit unique that way. But back to the real-world application. This is what you'll get from it, so you can wake up the next day and go to your job, whether it's in the field or on the assembly line at a manufacturing plant, all the way up into management. It doesn't have to be at the desk. You'll have a better understanding of those deliverables and tasks and what they mean in the bigger picture and why your director or manager is asking certain things of you. And that all leads to job satisfaction. All this ties back into a little bit of the theme of our having the luck of having Dr. Prop be able to speak to us a little bit today. HR is a term that's been used for a long time, but our team morale and the satisfaction in your job is what's a big hot topic right now, and it is at the end of the day about that retention of employment and those that will stay. Where after you invest a lot in your workforce and in the training, there's no greater investment. If you can have those employees want to be there, choose to be there, excited to be there, what is that worth in your business? You can do a lot of other training or perks, but at the end of the day, I think that's got the greatest ROI on any possible business. Of all markets, really, I think we all live it every day. Is there any other comments by anybody that's joined the webcast? I want to make sure I give the opportunity to anyone that had a comment or even a question while we have Dr. Prop on the web. And if not, then Jason, thank you for bringing in Dr. Jim Prop on the webcast, and thanks for being a good sport and just saying what camera, what live cast are we doing all of a sudden, and speaking to our audience. Really appreciate hearing about your expertise and your experience. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you. It's been a real treat.
All right, everybody at NextLev and everyone that's watching us out there, we'll see you next Thursday. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.